I think one thing a lot of us would believe to be true is that it's pretty much only rich people, or maybe not rich, but people who do pretty well financially that shop at grocery stores like Whole Foods, because Whole Foods is famously known as one of their nicknames, which is whole paycheck, meaning that you have to spend all of your money to buy groceries there, and that there's a lot of other cheaper alternatives with different grocery stores like Kroger and Aldi and Trader Joe's, or basically anywhere else. But the thing is, if Whole Foods only caters to the well-off, then why are they being forced now to lower their prices? That's what I want to ask everybody who says that this economy is still doing great, because that's exactly what they're doing now. Whole Foods is starting to feel the pinch of this recession, and guess what? They just announced they're going to be reducing prices on 25% of the items in their store, guys. That is significant, okay? We just covered how Walgreens is going to be closing potentially thousands of stores. They've already lowered the price on over 1,000 items in their stores. Target is now doing this. They're lowering the prices on thousands of items in their stores. Like, I know this is good news. Like this, I'm not complaining that prices are being lowered, but what I am doing is pointing out the fact that if everything was affordable and things were going great, they wouldn't have to do this to begin with. There would be no reason to lower prices or need to have, all of these places cutting prices on things if people could afford it and business was good. Walgreens wouldn't be closing 2,000 locations if business was good. And to me, this suggests only one thing, and that is that even people that make a lot of money and do well financially are feeling the pinch of this economy and inflation, and are starting to second guess where they shop. Even Walmart has seen a big increase into people shopping there that are high income earners, because even people like that are looking to save money. And listen, I'm not bashing anybody who's doing that. I think it's smart, guys. I do the same thing. I do things to save money. I usually only go to Whole Foods for like a handful of items in Miami that you just can't get at other stores. But other than that, I don't buy a lot of stuff from there. I do most of my shopping at Trader Joe's back home. It's a lot cheaper than Whole Foods, and you can walk out with 6-7 bags of groceries for like $200. And a lot of that stuff is organic too. And according to this food story, literally food prices just since 2021, guys, just when inflation was beginning to become a problem, is up 22%. Which I think many of us can say that it's probably arguably up even more than that in a lot of cases. But if you're buying expensive food like this, that's probably why they're lowering these prices, because you go to a place like Whole Foods and the prices are up like 40-50%. And they're saying that just the grocery bill alone right now, nothing else, forget about utilities, forget about rent, mortgage, insurance, any of that stuff, just the groceries is taking home a bigger chunk of Americans' discretionary spending than it has in over 30 years. So that's basically my whole lifetime. I'm 37 years old, and it's funny because I was just having this discussion with my family last night or a couple nights ago at dinner, and it was like, when I was growing up as a kid, I don't really remember a lot of things getting that expensive over time. The prices were pretty stable, and even though I didn't make money, I didn't buy things much as a kid, I went shopping a lot with my parents, and I never noticed crazy spikes in prices of anything like we're seeing now. So this definitely rings true, that the inflation we're seeing and the cost that people are experiencing when it just comes to living right now is definitely the highest that it's been in 30 years, without a doubt. That's been my personal experience. My mom says the same thing. My dad says the same thing. Like, everybody I've talked to here in Illinois is feeling it, including me. And one thing that people that shop at Whole Foods are doing is they're trading down to less expensive items. Like the store brand, they're buying the Whole Foods 365 brand instead of a name brand on something. Whole Foods has a lot to lose right now, and so that's why they're lowering their prices, because they still want to try to open 30 more stores this year, and open, guys, okay? Most places are closing down businesses right now. So how are you going to attract new customers? You have to have deals. You have to have lower prices. So if Whole Foods wants to have any shot at getting those 30 new stores open this year, they need to lower prices. And it's especially hard for stores like Whole Foods because they have a lot higher quality standards when it comes to, animal welfare rules and only selling cage-free eggs, different things like that. So they have way fewer suppliers to choose from when it comes to gathering the food in their stores. And as a result, they don't have as much negotiating power as maybe another grocer has. Check this out. I used to come to this place all the time with my parents as a kid. Dairy Ripple, Belvedere, Illinois' version of Dairy Queen. Although they do have a Dairy Queen now up the road, I noticed. And they got the whole street closed down today for some kind of festival, Belvedere Heritage Days. I came over this way, realized I couldn't drive down State Street. I've actually never seen anything like this here. Pretty cool. Painting the street. But one thing that Whole Foods has to be careful with is not falling into the trap of other big brands that have kind of like gone woke and then gone broke. For example, Target fell into this trap with the LGBTQ kids clothing or whatever it is that they had going on. And then Bud Light fell into this trap with having a trans person promote their beer, things like that, and people started boycotting it. So Whole Foods has to walk the thin line of trying to remain the brand that they have always been and committed to a higher quality and environmental standards and things like that, while not alienating customers and pushing people away and going broke because they're too woke. Now this kind of brings me into my next point, which is that a lot of reasons that people don't think that things are going bad right now in this economy is because their personal experience is actually going well. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, like right now, my personal experience is also going well, but I attribute most of that to the fact that I have been financially responsible for a lot of years now and have lived well below my means. So even if things were a lot better right now or they were bad, whatever it was, I was equipped to handle it regardless. I don't like being in debt. I don't like having my finances upside down. So it's something that I just personally committed to getting in order a long time ago. And one thing that's definitely juicing this economy right now is the fact that high income earners are still spending a lot of money. In fact, they say that high income earners are spending about $40 trillion right now, which is around half of all consumer spending in the US. So you have the well-to-do people that are spending half of the money out there, and the other half of the money being spent is by people that are just kind of getting by, or the working class. Because according to data from JP Morgan, the bottom 20% of consumers are contributing to only 10% of the spending in this economy right now. So it's funny because we're seeing this dynamic that we've kind of never really seen before, where you're not seeing the participation rate and everyone's experience be the same when it comes to spending money, when it comes to how well you're doing financially, all of those things. And they say what we're seeing right now is called a selective recession, meaning that some people are just thriving and doing extremely well while others are just struggling to get by. And the richest Americans have actually significantly increased their wealth over the past 4 years. And I feel like those are the people I see in my comments section that say, what are you talking about? There's no recession. Everything is great. And for them, it's true. So that's why, people can say, well, this guy is full of it or whatever, because on their watch and looking at their bank statements and their portfolios, I am. But for probably 80 to 90% of people out there, I'm not full of it. What I'm talking about here explains what they're really going through. This water shot that you guys just saw behind me is Kishwaukee River that runs right through the middle of Belvedere, Illinois. And the next water shot that you guys are going to see from me after this is going to be at Richardson Bay in Tiburon, California. And Almost there, guys. A few more days. Really looking forward to it. Now, the richest Americans have actually gotten so rich over the past 4 years. The top 10% of households have actually gained a whopping $30.5 trillion of wealth since 2022, while the bottom 50% gained just 1.8 trillion in wealth. That is a massive discrepancy. So when I see the comments section and I see the people that are in denial that this is all happening, I think one of two things. Either one, they're rich and it's not happening for them, or two, they're in complete denial and they made a lot of bad financial choices and don't want to admit it. So that's probably the set of people that are not admitting this recession right now. And it's not a surprise of why this is happening. It's because, the top 10% of Americans also own the majority of all of the stocks in the stock market, and they also own the majority of assets like real estate and rental properties and other things. Businesses. And the number one thing that middle income people are stressed out about right now financially is inflation. This is all according to JP Morgan. Less than half of middle income households rated their finances as excellent or good, and 68% rated their ability to save as not so good or outright poor. And so that's how I know that we are heading into this recession, guys. Like, you can't have the top percent of people keep everything afloat forever. And I want to talk about this more in my next video when it comes to real estate and the housing market too, because they're propping up the housing market as well. People that have a lot of money are the ones who are buying all these houses. But this also goes along with the debate. I don't know if anybody watched the presidential debate the other night. It was pretty entertaining, to say the least. You guys know that I'm not a political channel, but I want to cover a couple of things, people are concerned about after watching this debate when it comes to the economy. One thing that Biden said in the debate was that working class people are still in trouble. That was a quote from something he said, nothing crazy or political here, all right? But the thing is, what he means by that and where people are struggling financially are in a few different categories. The first thing, and the obvious one, is rent, okay? Even though rent prices have been coming down slightly, it is still very unaffordable for a lot of people right now. And on top of that, rent has also outpaced inflation. As of the May inflation data, the rent is up 5.3% from the prior year compared to the CPI, which is at 3.3%. So even though rent prices have been coming down, it is not enough, guys. It is not really helping anybody so far. This has also been one of the biggest contributors to the CPI data, is the fact that rents are still so high. And I'm going over the big major expenses that was referenced in this debate that people are getting crushed with. Car insurance is the next one. That's up 20.3% from 1 year ago. And this is due to all sorts of things: the rising cost of car repairs, more extreme weather events, more accidents. Inflation makes everything more expensive. And like we talked about in the car video the other day, just the rising cost of owning a car has gone up so much that it makes it hard, guys. It makes it hard to pay for all this stuff. Just when you have insurance alone up 20% year over year, not to mention all the other costs of ownership to go along with just having a car, people can't make it. And in case you haven't noticed the common theme so far, these are all things people need. If you drive a car, you have to have car insurance. If you don't want to live on the streets, you have to have rent or a mortgage payment. And the next one you also have to have if you don't live on the street, which is electricity for your rental or your house that you own. Okay, that's up 5.9% in May as well, far outpacing inflation. And unfortunately, the outlook is that electricity bills are only going to continue getting higher from here. In fact, I'm afraid to see what my electric bill is going to be in California, because I've never paid a California electric bill up until this year, and I've heard how expensive it is. So I'm waiting for the shocker of that, and if it's crazy, I'll definitely share it with you guys here on the channel. In fact, it's predicted that people all across America are going to be paying record high electric bills this summer just to keep their homes cool from air conditioning. I know in Miami, that's always the time of year when my electric bill is the highest. It won't be now because I'm not there, so I won't be running the AC as much. But I remember prior years when I was in Miami for the summer, it was common for my electric bill to be close to $250 a month. And then the next essential, of course, that is going up in price too fast is food. Specifically, food away from home or eating out is 4% higher than it was a year ago, which I think is also way underestimated. As somebody who has eaten out a lot on this road trip across the country, obviously you can't cook anything when you're staying in a hotel every night, so every day we had to eat out, and I noticed that everywhere is more expensive than it was a year ago. Not even one restaurant has good deals anymore when it comes to feeling like, oh yeah, that's a better value than it used to be. No, that doesn't exist anymore. And you know, guys, I was feeling kind of lazy to do this road trip and come up here. I almost wanted to just fly here because it is a lot of driving, and I'm not driving to California. In fact, the car shipping company just picked up my Jeep yesterday. I'm driving the Camaro until it's time to leave. I'm glad I ended up making the drive up here because it's so good to always drive through different parts of the country and see how different areas are either thriving or dying. You know, like a lot of these places I showed you here in Illinois aren't doing so good anymore. You know, other places look like they really are thriving, like Charlotte, North Carolina, looks like a great place to live right now. And I just think that if you're not having the experience you want to have in life, or you feel like you just don't have the opportunities that you would like to have, or you'd like to live in a nicer area and not have to pay as much money as you do now, I'd be looking at moving, because there are places that are still doing good and the cost of living is reasonable. And once again, you know, eating out in restaurants is being propped up by people who earn the most money. They say that only the highest earning consumers are dining out more often than they did pre-pandemic. I'm dining out less than I did pre-pandemic, with the exception of the road trip when you're forced to, but at home, when I'm sitting settled and when I'm in California, it'll be the same thing. Most days I'm gonna be cooking at home. I'm not gonna be eating out anymore. They say that households earning more than $200,000 annually are the only group that spent more money in restaurants in 2023 than they did in 2019. And once again, I would attribute that to inflation. It's not that they're going out more. It's just like this whole debacle with McDonald's and the housing market and all of this, that their sales volume is down, but their numbers are up. And that's because their prices are so much higher than they were before. You can't even compare restaurant prices from 2019 up through today. It's so much more expensive. So they might look at it as people are eating out more who have the money, but what it really is they're just paying a higher bill. Say they went to a restaurant in 2019 and the bill was 50 bucks. Well, now that same bill is probably $80 or more just for the same food. And so it skews the data and it makes it look like people are spending more than they really are. And you know, guys, since I brought up the debate, one thing that I wanted to watch the debate for, besides entertainment purposes, was I wanted to see if either one of the candidates would be bringing up the deficit, bringing up how badly we are in debt with this country, and how overblown our spending is, and how much that ultimately ends up hurting all of us. And unfortunately, that was just a very small piece of the debate. That was not center stage. I think they spent more time talking about who's a better golfer than talking about the budget and the national deficit. And that's how you know both of these people are going to be clowns no matter who gets elected. The annual budget deficit is about to hit $1.9 trillion for 2024. And that's as of the latest estimate from the Congressional Budget Office. That's up $1.5 trillion from just 4 months ago. That's how bad this is. But yet, these guys are talking about who's a better golfer? Give me a break. This is just such a clown show right now. And I just don't care. I just don't care anymore who's going to get elected, because whoever is in, they're going to keep spending. And that's going to be our biggest problem and the downfall of this country, unfortunately. And they say by the time we hit 2034, we're going to have a $2.9 trillion deficit. Well, I think that's probably an underestimate, because that's 10 years from now, and it's only going to go up by $1 trillion. Look how fast they're spending money. Look how fast they're just borrowing and don't care about the interest rates. They don't care about anything. This is more like Happy Gilmore versus Shooter McGavin than, Trump versus Biden. Biden wants to raise your taxes basically across the board, especially the corporate tax. They want to raise that. Even though they say it's on people that are earning $400,000 and up, I can guarantee you it will be on everybody, because that's how taxes always go. And then the whole student loan forgiveness thing increases the deficit and ultimately increases the need to increase taxes. But Trump isn't any better. He promised to pay off the national debt last time he was president, which didn't happen, obviously. In fact, the deficit just got worse while he was president. Because when Trump was president, he did not sign into law a single piece of legislation that reduced deficits. And that's how you know he's not going to do that this time either. In fact, during Trump's presidency, the national debt rose by more than $7 trillion. So I know there's a lot of other reasons that people want to choose Trump versus Biden or whatever, but the reality is neither one of these jokers is going to fix our biggest problem, which is the national debt and getting this country on a balanced budget. And what the crazy thing to me, guys, is that even though America is essentially dead broke right now, and even worse than dead broke with the amount of debt we have, and this economy is screaming it right now, that all people want to care about is if you're on the red team or the blue team, and no one's paying attention to what really matters, which is cleaning up our debt and cleaning up this huge deficit that we just can't afford. Like, if you think you're broke now, just wait until another 4 years goes by with one of these next presidents and see how much broker you'll be then. And like I said, there's probably 1,000 other reasons why somebody wants one candidate over the other that have nothing to do with the debt or financial reasons, and that's fine, because that's all politics, which I don't really cover here on this channel. But I just want you to know that whichever decision you make, unfortunately, isn't going to fix inflation, it's not going to make your cost of living go down, and it's not going to help your wallet in the places that people need it the most right now. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.